What is up, winning team? Hello, everybody, and welcome back to chapter 9 of Beyond the Veil, the Bubble Theory, and the Fourth Dimension, a beginner's journey into high dimensions and modern physics. The current book we are reading by Jamil Chamberlain, and we're getting into chapter 9, and it's getting juicy because I have indeed spoken with the author, and I know some spoilers, and guys, we're going to go through this as best as we can, as normal, because it's just going to get so good. Like, I'm so glad to be here, and I'm so happy to be here. If you guys don't know what this whole series is about, we're looking into the fourth dimension. It's something I've wanted to do for a long time. I've said to you guys ever since I did my previous God versus Science video, where I introduced my theory about the law of entropy, starting with Adam and Eve in the garden and all of that malarkey. Go check that out. I got a God versus Science playlist where I put all my God versus Science videos in there. We're going into the fourth dimension. I always said we're going to come back. We're going to go to the dimensions of the universe next because it just felt like that's where we needed to go. Here we are. The full playlist with the introduction with more details about this is in the description box below. And a link to purchase this book, which you can buy on Amazon, is also there as well. Also, he gave me another link to more of his writing that goes into more in-depth detail. Obviously, this is written for the sake of, as it says, a beginner's journey. But if you want to know more of the detail, if you're a scientist and you're more into the field, please go ahead and check. There's a third link also in the description box where you can get into the more nitty-gritty details of it all, which you guys, you know how I love that myself. As a scientist, obviously, I'm a chemist, not a physicist, but my favorite area of chemistry is physical chemistry, and I love me some quantum. So we're getting into chapter 9, and it's rethinking gravity and forces. Now, this is already interesting to me because I have said to you guys offhandedly, kind of not really properly, that I don't necessarily agree with the scientific belief surrounding the concept of gravity, which is a huge thing to say. Just to recap so you guys remember, as well, we had talked about how in the fourth dimension, what if the fourth dimension, essentially, this is the theory, is that we all are a set of bubbles, our universe being a bubble in like a multiverse of different bubbles, right? And what if some of the phenomena that we see in our individual universes, so like in our universe, some things that don't follow the normal scientific laws or expectations based on what we know, maybe what if that is because of these interactions between universes, between these bubbles, which shouldn't normally interact, hence because of having different signatures, which we're calling S energy, which is in the S energy field, which is the fourth dimensional field that we're thinking about. They're not normally able to interact, but maybe there's reasons why they could interact, and maybe those interactions are what are causing for certain things we would expect to happen we wouldn't expect to happen in our own universe happening or not happening, if that makes sense. And things that we can't fully explain, as I said, in our universe as it stands as of right now. We only know we only know what's happening in 5% of our universe. 95% is dark energy and dark matter, i.e. we don't exactly know what it is, but it's having an impact. We're in chapter 9. Go and do your homework. Go and catch up if you're confused. Chapter 9, rethinking gravity and the forces. The phenomenon of interlinking occurs when bubbles with similar S energy signatures begin to interact. This interaction can lead to fascinating and potentially profound consequences for the bubbles involved. Conditions for interlinking: signature similarity. So the closer the S energy signatures of two bubbles, the higher the likelihood of interaction. And then the energy fluctuations, external forces or internal changes can alter a bubble's signature, bringing it closer to another's. So the whole reason why we believe that, according to the bubble theory, that the bubbles don't interact in general, and why they exist, and why you're not knowing of or seeing what's going on in another dimension, in another bubble, so another universe, is because they have the different S energy signature. So how similar to the examples he's used of like having a radio, how you tune into different frequencies on the radio, you hear and you can see and experience what's happening at the frequency of the radio that you're tuned into. That doesn't not mean that there's not still other frequencies happening in the same space, essentially like the fourth dimension and the multiple different universes. So in order for there to be any kind of interlinking, it's being suggested here that the signatures, so each has its own signature, S energy signature. So if their signatures, the closer they are to each other, the higher the likelihood of them interacting. And if either external or internal forces can alter the bubble signature, brings it closer to another's. Cool. Mechanisms leading to interaction. So he's put here resonance. When bubbles reach a resonant frequency, they can exchange energy or matter. Field disturbances, fluctuations in the S energy field itself might cause temporary overlaps between bubbles. So the possible outcomes of interaction: energy transfer, stabilization or destabilization. Energy can flow from one bubble to another, potentially stabilizing one while destabilizing another. Ooh, energy can flow from one bubble to another, potentially stabilizing one while destabilizing the other. Okay. Observable effects. Energy transfers might manifest as sudden energy spikes or anomalies within a bubble. Aha, okay, that makes sense. Okay. Matter exchange, transference of particles. Particles or objects might move between bubbles, appearing or disappearing inexplicably. Particles or objects might move between bubbles, appearing or alteration of physical laws. The introduction of matter from another bubble could cause local variation in physical properties. This is getting interesting. Okay, so merging of bubbles. Partial merging. Some regions of bubbles might merge, creating areas where the properties of bubbles coexist. Complete merging. In rare cases, bubbles might fully merge, resulting in a new bubble with combined properties. This is so interesting for me because, like, my whole reason for wanting to study into the fourth dimension is because I truly believe that the deeper you go with the dimensions, the more you're going to be able to explain the spiritual world with science. That's genuinely, I've said this to you guys before, that is my life's dream work, to be able to do that before I die, is like prove that the spiritual things that people say is just airy fairy, whatever, to prove it with the science. And this stuff, I'm not going to lie, if you're paying attention, it's starting to give rise to the way that some of this stuff could actually make sense. And I know that's really hard for people to understand. And honestly, it would take high level scientists to have to be able to kind of fully acknowledge that. And you'd also just have to be open-minded, which is something else that he says in here. Talks about how, be open-minded. Like, obviously he's talking about science here, but he's like, be open-minded. And that's a big part of being a scientist. I've said it many times and you hear me say it again. You have to be open-minded to whatever you think and whatever makes logical sense in your brain. Your brain doesn't know a lot of things. You got to be open-minded to the actual evidence being presented and or viable theories. So analogies to clarify interaction. Tuning forks and resonance. Imagine two tuning forks of the same frequency placed near each other. Striking one causes the other to vibrate sympathetically. Bubbles as tuning forks. Similar S energy signatures resonate, leading to interaction. Energy transfer, vibration, energy, moves from one tuning fork, bubble, to the other. Overlapping waves. So these are all the analogies. Dropping two stones close together in a pond creates overlapping ripples. Interference patterns. Where ripples meet, they interfere constructively or destructively. Oh, I like this. Okay, I see where we're going with this. Right. Bubble interaction. Overlapping S energy signatures create areas of interaction. So these are ways you can actually visualize what he's talking about. And I like this example, the two stones. And if you drop them both, they're both going to create ripples, but those ripples are going to interfere, and they're either going to interfere constructively or destructively. So, potential real-world implications. Unexplained phenomena. So we've got disappearances. Sudden vanishings of objects or even people might be explained by matter transferring to another bubble. Now we're getting interesting, right? So this is actually fair enough. There's a lot of things that, situations and things that have happened in the world that just cannot be explained. But apparently there are a lot of proofs of or sightings of, like I said, sudden vanishing objects or even people might be explained by matter transferring to another bubble. This is so cool. Like, thank God I watched the Spider-Verse movies, because I never really thought about the concept of a multiverse prior to that. And it's actually quite funny because, anyway, we'll come back to it. Because I told you guys that all these movies are based off of, all these science fiction movies are based off of real life science. And so when I'm watching like the things like the Spider-Man, the Spider-Verse movies and the multiverse, it made me think about it a lot, because you got, like, spoiler alert, Miles Morales, who is obviously Spider-Man in one universe, but he's the Prowler in another universe. And it's quite interesting. And it's just a lot of interesting things, and just a lot of things to think about, right? A lot of things to think about. Anomalous events. Reports of objects appearing from nowhere or changes in physical properties could result from bubble interactions. You see, this is where you get me with the spiritual thing, because this is all to me what I would describe as supernatural activity, but we will continue. Note, these explanations are speculative and not scientifically verified. Love that. Quantum entanglement connection. Instantaneous correlations. Entangled particles might share S energy signature across bubbles, accounting for their connected behavior. Non-local effects. Interactions in the fourth dimension could provide a framework for understanding quantum non-locality. Okay. 1 second. I need to scribble something in this book right now. Sorry, just wanted to make a note of a question I was going to ask the author. Okay, so challenges and considerations. Energy requirements. High energy thresholds. Significant energy might be needed to alter a bubble's S energy signature sufficiently for interaction. Stability risk. Manipulating the S energy field could risk destabilizing bubbles. That's quite a big thing as well, I could imagine, because if they're all existing in the S energy field, so surely also the changes in the S energy field in the whole field will affect all of the bubbles, which again, that's just like, I can't even envision what that is yet I can't even fully conceptualize that concept just yet. Technological limitations, current capabilities. We lack the technology to intentionally alter S energy signatures or detect interactions reliably. So yeah, which kind of makes sense based on what's been said so far, the idea that we a lot of what we believe about the fourth dimension at this stage is based on, we can see, like I said earlier in the video, and has been said in this book, obviously, I'm just regurgitating it in my own ways, that a lot of the stuff that we're determining that there's another dimension because we're seeing the signs, not that we can necessarily see it, hence why there are the theories about these different these potential different theories of what it could be, because we lack. And again, how are you going to build, I asked this question in the previous one, how do you build technology for a dimension that you don't even know about? You know what I mean? How do you quantify what's taking place? So it's so interesting, all of this. Future possibilities. Advancements in science might enable control over bubble interaction. So that's interesting that we're even thinking about control, which is funny that he immediately went now to ethical and philosophical questions, because I was just thinking about the ethics of controlling bubble interactions and whatnot. So he said, should we interact? If interaction becomes possible, ethical considerations arise about the consequences. For me, my biggest concern always gone right there into, anyway. My concern always is who is doing it and what is their goal at hand, because it's all well and good us running 100 times a mile and like 100 miles ahead into science and digging deep and finding all this stuff out. Who's the one who gets to choose what to do, and what are their motives in doing things? Because that's my concern, is say we do make all these discoveries, who's the person who's making the discovery, who's the person who gets to choose what does or doesn't happen? Those are the questions I'd be asking, because those are the things that worry me, because I know humans and I know our tendencies to not maybe the average person, but definitely people in power, to take advantage of things for the sake of their own agendas. Then we have impact on reality. Altering our bubble or another could have unforeseen effects on both. Exactly. Again, because it's all experimental, it's all new, we don't actually know what's going to happen. And I say this to people about a lot of science. This is why I'm not quick to just jump on board with things that people suggest that we do as a society. That science has figured out in like the last 5 to 10 years. Because I'm like, realistically speaking, we don't know the long-term effects. And a lot of things that we've done historically, like think about lobotomies. That one for me, that gets me the most at the moment, ever since I looked into lobotomies recently, and how people, just scientists, because scientists, like I said, are very good at disconnecting their emotions. I told you guys I'm very good at doing that as well, which is a highly unfemale characteristic about myself. And I've actually found that I can't stand my emotions, because they do change my opinion, and I tend to be more empathetic and sympathetic and caring about the actual human life. The scientific side of my brain is good at shutting off all of that and just thinking purely about experiments, facts, figures, problems and solutions without so much thinking of the human element of it all, right? Why am I saying that? When they were doing lobotomies, right, at the time, it seemed like a good idea to cut people's brains out, because as far as the problem for them was, oh, these people are thinking too much for themselves and they're not getting in line. So we're just going to they started off by just removing parts of the brain, and then they just went to that was the, what was that? The prefrontal, I believe, lobotomy. And then they went to the transdermal one, where they basically poked like a thing through your eye, and then basically just used this thing to damage a part of your brain, so you essentially couldn't think. But again, the side effects that they didn't like were the fact that people lost their personality and all this stuff, like, duh. But like, at the time, they didn't think about that, because they were just thinking about the solution to the problem at hand, and then the symptoms came afterwards. So again, and then they found themselves at using pills and stuff, and tranquilizers were just better, and that's why we don't do lobotomies anymore. But my point in mentioning that as an example is to suggest that, like, obviously anything that we do in science, it's experimental. We don't necessarily know the consequences, because we're still discovering so much. Just so that has been said. Okay, so speculative technologies, interdimensional communication, sending signals, developing methods to transmit information between bubbles. So that's one thing we could do. Or receiving responses, interpreting signals from other bubbles, travel between bubbles. Portal concepts, theoretical gateways allowing matter to move between bubbles. Safety concerns, ensuring stability and safety during transit. Inspirations from science fiction. Many of these ideas have been explored in science fiction, sparking imagination about parallel universes and interdimensional travel. I told you guys that it's so funny. I've been mentioning science fiction throughout this, and so it's interesting that he was always going to get to here. Oh my gosh, while he's watching this, he must be thinking this is crazy, like that I'm just like saying stuff, and it's like, oh my gosh, that's literally, I've already written about that. But I've said this to you guys already, like, all of this science fiction stuff, I truly believe that the science people who write science fiction, they want to have a scientific reason to be able to explain things that are considered supernatural, as in not or extraordinary, right? Things that don't go along with our current understanding, but they don't have a leg to stand on. So it's either that they're a crazy person like me who's prepared to believe in the things of the spirit, or they're a scientist and they just express those thoughts through the realms of science fiction. That's what I believe. So yeah, many of these ideas have been explored in science fiction, sparking imagination about parallel universes and interdimensional travel. Literature and film stories often depict characters crossing into alternate realities, reflecting humanity's fascination with the concept. Influence on science. Fiction can inspire scientific inquiry, leading to real-world advancement. Moving forward with caution. While the idea of interacting with other bubbles is intriguing, it's essential to approach the concept responsibly. Scientific rigor. Any exploration must be grounded in empirical evidence and adhere to scientific methods. Yes. Ethical guidelines, consideration of potential impacts is crucial to prevent harm. So that's like what I was saying. We also don't know what we're doing. So in essence, a lot of this could be some of the experiments, some of the things that these people could be doing could essentially be the equivalent of setting off a bomb without knowing you're setting off a bomb, right? It could be, oh, we just think we're doing this, but in reality, you're igniting a bomb that's going to affect the whole entire world. So like I said, because we don't know what we don't know, going back to like the lobotomies, going back to a lot of things, we don't know what we don't know, so we also don't know the consequences, and hence why my trust is in God and not in science. But I do very much love the science. But that's it. A lot of things we just find out the hard way. It was like that medicine they kept giving to pregnant women, that they didn't realize that there was basically, I'm not going to get into all of that because it's a really long, deep scientific explanation. Anyways, so key takeaways from chapter 9. Interlinking defined. Interactions between bubbles occurs when their S energy signatures become similar. Mechanisms of interaction. Resonance and energy fluctuations can lead to bubbles overlapping or exchanging energy and matter. Analogies used. Tuning forks, so like resonant frequencies leading to energy transfer. Overlapping waves. Interference patterns representing bubble interactions. Potential implications, explaining unexplained phenomena, exploring quantum entanglement, and considering future technologies. Then we have challenges in ethics, which is a big thing that we always have to consider in science. That tends to be the part as well, if I'm being so for real, that scientists tend to find frustrating, and hence why I also believe that there are scientists in the underground tunnels doing some sciences that maybe, and I've said this in my other videos, not related to this series, but I've said it before, that I do believe in all this talk about underground tunnels, that there are a lot of areas in science and whatever where people are doing scientific experiments that would not be considered ethical. And so they have to do them in hidden places. An inspiration from fiction, science fiction explores these themes, reflecting and inspiring real scientific inquiry. So again, I think people have got some kind of inkling or conviction that a lot of things don't necessarily make as much sense as we think that it's going to, and or there are things that point to other potential possibilities. So I therefore think that like people utilize science fiction as a way to go that extra level without having, as stated here beautifully, as it says here, scientific rigor and exploration must be grounded in empirical evidence and adhere to scientific methods. That's where you kind of lose that opportunity when you're looking into the kind of more sci-fi, science fiction, supernatural, whatever you want to call it, types of things. So I'm really getting fascinated by this. I hope you guys are, and I hope you guys are enjoying it. In the next chapter, what we're going on to in chapter 10, we'll be discussing shedding light on dark matter and energy. Oh, I can't wait for this. Okay, so come on back if you guys want to hear more about that in the next part of this series. Don't forget that the whole series is going to be linked in the description box below for you to watch all of the videos for yourself. Catch up if this is the first one you're watching, because otherwise a lot of this stuff's probably going over your head. Don't forget to purchase the book if you'd like to. It's all in there. I've been annotating in my book and taking notes and I've had to do some off study as well to just like try and make sure that I'm understanding what's happening, etc., as well as speaking with the author, who, as I also mentioned earlier, sent me another link for you guys in the description where you can go and read even more in-depth detail of this stuff. As I said, this is like a beginner's journey. So if you want to get more into the nitty-gritties, into the details, if you're a scientist and you're like, I don't know about this isn't explained and that isn't explained, guess what? It's all there in the description box. Go check it out for yourself. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in chapter 10. If life's a game, let's pay to win. God bless you all. God loves you. I love you. And I'll see you in my next one.